Alright, so these are the piston rings for that SVT Focus. They're hard to come by. They are $50 a hole. They sell the kits individually. You can't buy a full rebuild kit. You have to get them all, you know, it's kind of like a repair set. Anyway, we're going to get those set up. The factory clearance for end gap on this SVT engine is 12 thousandths to 20 thousandths. And so I'm going to run these on the loose end. I'm going to come in at about 19 thousandths is what I'm going to try and do, because you just never know what a little engine like this might come across later in its life. So anyway, we're going to get to that. I'll show you how to get these rings set up. So the first thing I've done here with these bags is, since I have 4 individual sets and they're nice and separated, it's convenient for me to mark them 1 through 4. And the reason I'm going to do that is when I get these rings set up for one of these holes, in this case I'm talking number 1, when I get these rings sized for number 1, I'm not going to remix those. I'm going to make sure that the one that I fit to 1 makes it in number 1. So this is just going to kind of help me keep this all organized right here. Alright, so I got these pistons and rods completely de-ringed. I have to take a bearing out here. But other than that, they're cleaned up and ready for ring installation. You can actually see the little M for Molly that they have marking the rods, which is pretty cool. On the back side, they got the little Ford emblem. Alright, so here's the top ring. It actually says top on it. You can maybe see that. So this top ring, that is also the top side of the top ring. And this is my number 1 bag, so I'm going to go ahead and put in my number 1. You want to take it and kind of crimp it together just a little bit and press it in lengthways like that. Then you press it down a little bit so it started. Then you turn it over, and now it'll sit in there basically flat. Then what you need to do is take one of these pistons. You'll take this guy and use it to square it up in the bore. So kind of find like that lip right there. That's about how deep I'll go. And then same on this side. Okay, now we're square. Now we can pull it out, and now that should be sitting in there just right. Then you want to grab your feeler gauge set, and what you're going to do is you're going to measure the gap in between the end of that ring right there. And these are set up, mine are measure thousandths. And what I'm looking for right here is 19 thousandths. That'd be this guy right here. So I'm going to take him out by himself and see if he'll fit through there. And it doesn't. You can see it doesn't quite get in there. So what I'm going to have to do is take and put this on the little grinding tool and open up that gap. Take a little bit of the ring material away till it gets bigger. I actually measured this beforehand, and out of the box they're at about like 12. Alright, so I got my ring here now, same orientation that it sits in the cylinder, and I'm going to go ahead and lay it down onto this ring grinding tool. And basically this is an abrasive wheel that's going to take material right off of the ends of these rings. So you basically use your hand and hold this thing down, hold the ring down, so that you can actually press up against that abrasive wheel while you spin this handle. So let's give it a try here. Alright, so I got this sitting just so. So this is a fresh wheel and a ring that I've never ground before. It's way smaller than a type of ring that I've been used to working with. So I'm going to check this often. I'm going to go put it back into the cylinder, measure the gap again, and just slowly creep up on that 19 thousandths gap. I'm going to do that for the top ring, the middle ring, and the, well, we'll see about the oil rings, but for sure the top, first and second ring. Okay, so it's a minute or two later, and here's my 19 thousandths feeler gauge, the one I'm targeting. And so I'm going to go ahead and put this in here, and you can see that that gets in there and gets flush up to the back wall. So I know I have that 19, you know, the back of the gauge right here is meeting up with the cylinder wall. So you know I got my 19 gap. The next thing you want to do is take the second ring, and in this kit this is called a Napier ring. And so basically, I don't know if you'll be able to pick this up on the camera or not, but if you see on the end there, that ring is actually undercut. And so underneath here you can see there's a little gap. That section goes down, the part with the recessed area, that goes on the bottom side. So that's the way you want to put this into the cylinder when you're measuring it. So same kind of deal, we're going to put it in like this, rotate it over, measure that distance, and grind accordingly. Alright, so here's my second ring in. Again, that's that Napier style ring. And basically this measures out at like 32 thousandths right out of the box. So that's obviously larger than the 19 I was going for, but that's okay. We're just going to ride with it. Obviously can't make that any smaller, and I know these are the right rings and the top ring fits good, so I'm just going to roll with this, and we'll get the oil ring set up. Alright, so I got all my piston rings set up here. They're numbered in the bags for the cylinder that they went in. This here's number 1. So those have all been fit and filed to the right size. Right before I'm going to put these on, I'm actually going to go through and make sure there's no burrs on these suckers. I don't want any like little edges or nicks or burrs right on the edges where I was filing. So I'll go and just feel with my fingers and make sure everything's good. Then I'm going to actually go put them onto the piston. Just take a little motor oil and get this thing all slippery, and then just slip it over the top. And you'll want to start, of course, with the bottom, the oil rings, then the second, then the top. There we go. And that's done, and everything slides really nice. You can set these out of phase with each other. You don't want the ring gaps to be stacked like this. You don't want them to be together, even though they do rotate while you're going. Just make at least a minimal effort to get those staggered away from each other, here and here, or 120 out. So that'll be good. Alright, well that worked great. Got my piston rings all onto the actual pistons now, and everything went quite well. I don't think maybe you can see the ridge on that second ring, and yeah, I think we're good. So we'll get these, now the bearing shells, get those out and put into the rods. Alright, so here's the pieces I'm working with here. I got my rods, they're a cracked style rod. Those are all taken apart, and you'll again want to keep the big end pieces together. You know, this end has to go to this end. You can't flip them around, and you can't go with any other rod. So these are all together the way I want. These rod bolts I'm throwing out because this is what I got instead. I got some ARP Rod Bolts. There's the part number right there. And basically these are better than stock. And so those will help these rods stay together during any abuse that should find them. And then also I have a set of Molly rod bearings, and here's the part number for those. And so these rod bearings are just a replacement unit, standard size, and hopefully they work really well with this, and I'm going to get them set up. Alright, to get these rod bearing shells together, first thing you just want to make sure that these caps are like well cleaned out, no dust, no grit, no grease in there. So these guys are sorted. So you just take your shell, peel one off of the case right here, and then you'll notice it has a tang. Nowhere else does it. So you'll have to sit this down in here, and it can only go one way. So get this down here, and then you just kind of press this down in here. Get it aligned with the tang. Press that down in there until it fits really nice, and you just press really hard down there. And then it'll be seated down in there. And then you'll do that here with the rod, the actual rod side as well. Same deal. There's a tang location there. And we'll just take this guy and we'll get him started here. And push him right down. Looks great. Then this all has to go together exactly the way it came apart. And so on in my rods, I actually marked the opposite side, but you can see that crack when it goes through together right, it's perfect. So I'm going to go through and put bearings in all the rest of these caps and rods. Alright, these pieces are all baptized and brake clean. They've all been rinsed thoroughly. And then over here, I took the cylinders and I basically greased them up with oil and lined them, took a rag with oil, just sopping in oil, and tried to kind of lube the cylinder walls. And so this block is ready to accept those pistons. I do have a tool here that I use to compress the piston rings. This is just something you can get at your regular parts store. But basically you take this and it ratchets shut on the top of that piston there, and it'll hold the rings shut so that you can actually get it driven into down into the block. So we'll try that now. Alright, so here's my piston just about ready to go in, and you notice this arrow right here. This arrow points to the front of the engine. I don't know if that's going to pick up on the camera or not, but that's the front of the engine. It's pretty soft on this one, but anyway, so you'll turn it like this here, so the arrow points this way, and that's the front again. Alright, so all the connecting rods are torqued down and mounted up. Everything worked out just fine there. The next thing I'll probably want to do is the rear main seal and or the oil pump on the front. But that sure turned out really nice. I'm excited for how this project is going so far. Alright, next item of business here is this oil pump. It's a Melling M317, and I have it out here on the bench. It comes with a gasket and the pump, or the pickup gasket. And so I took and I layered it with RTV on both sides. I don't know if you need that or not. I'm just gonna do it to be safe. And anyway, you just use the same bolts you had right here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and stick this on. You have to be careful with the seal here. You don't want to mess it up while you're putting it on. And this shape right here is actually where the oil pump gear is inside there, and it has to mesh up right. So just be careful, and it should slip right on. Alright, so the oil pump is put on here, and you just want a little bit of, you don't want this to be proud, the oil pump housing to be proud of the machine surface there. So I have between 10 and 30 thousandths dip right there. So it's high and then it drops down for that little gap. So I think that's the way you want it. Next thing I'm gonna work on is this rear main seal. There's the new seal, and there is the gasket to the rear of the block. This is the part number, I think. Yep. And pretty easy deal here. This seal gets basically tapped in there like this direction, so that it fits. And then this guy goes behind there. And again, I don't know if I need any RTV here or not, so I'm going to use some just in case.
Alright, so I had a noob mistake here. God, so annoying. So anyway, I had this. I was hitting it with the hammer sideways and smashed this piece off of here, so god dang it, but that's alright, it's still gonna hold. It's still gonna seal around the outside, so we're okay. I even do have a second one of these, but I'm too lazy to do the other one. I don't want to wait for another seal, so this will work fine. It's just annoying and, you know, just part of those deals. Alright, well I got the rear main seal on there. Kind of a tight area to operate there. I had to take actually one of the arms of the stand off to get it in there. And so it's sitting in there nice enough. This is the girdle, kind of like the upper oil pan, I guess some would call it. And anyway, if you look down in here, the main studs are going to interfere. You can see there's the gap that I'm looking at. The main studs are actually going to interfere there. And there's a couple different locations, and each one of those webs, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, or however many of them. So there's several locations where it's going to interfere. Here's another one you can see right there. So what I'm gonna have to do is either grind or mill or do something to relieve the girdle portion so that those studs can sit in there comfortably. So I'm gonna try and mark out on here where I need to grind and relieve it, and see if I can't get it taken care of. Alright, so I took a couple trial fittings here, but I got that ground out and really cut out, and it's fitted now. We actually took a endoscope cam and went in from the end and viewed some of the areas we thought might be close, and they aren't, so we're good to go there. Alright, so here's my relieved girdle here, and the part number of the gasket I'm using is this guy right here. And so basically it sits right in here. It has two nice little bosses here that fit into holes into the actual girdle here, so that you can get it all set up before you transfer it over to the engine. And I'm just going to put a spot of RTV at these seams, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, and I think that's all I will need. You can see where it's meant to receive it right here. That little pattern is where it will hold that RTV. So anyway, we'll try it out, see how it goes. Alright, so the next thing I gotta do, this gasket was in the oil pump kit, and so I'll use that, and this steel neck
pickup tube that I cleaned out. Everything looks good there, so I'll get this bolted down. I'm not crazy about the plastic one. I think I'll stick with the steel one. Alright, so here is my freshly re-spray painted oil pan here. I actually blasted it, sandblasted it, and then I put self-etching primer and Duplicolor black. It's actually the color of my Lightning, which I think is the same as this car. Anyway, I painted that up nice. Then here's the gasket that I'm going to use right here. It is a Molle part number right there. So I'm going to use this guy, and gosh, I want to put this on dry, but I probably will put RTV on both sides of it and stick it on there all sloppy like, so I'm kind of bummed about that, but I'll do that and see how it goes.